Welcome everybody. I'm Kelly Moore with MSU Extension, Missoula County Extension Office. So glad to see you all again. Thanks for being here in person. We welcome everybody every month to be here in person if you can, and if not, glad you can watch online. So today we're going to do something called Mulligatawny Soup, and it's kind of a fun word to say. Sounds like some of you are familiar with that and have had it before. Those people who are very fortunate to get to travel, if you've gone to India or Sri Lanka or just places like that, you probably have had the opportunity to taste something authentic. There are so many different recipes out there. So today we're just going to kind of do a more traditional kind of British version. And we like to talk about the history of food here because it helps to know where things came from. And if you ever want to look back and read a little bit more about mulligatawny, then it's very interesting. I got the quick Wikipedia view. So if you want to do any more in-depth study, I think that would be very interesting. So it's actually thought to have originated in Sri Lanka, and mulligatawny is from the Tamil, which is a southern Indian language, and that means pepper water. So, of course, the British colonized India back in the 1700s, and that's very long history there. Not everyone was happy about that, so it's kind of good to read, or if you're able to talk to somebody who has a little bit more expertise on that. So it's also kind of a curry soup. So we're going to mix a lot of different spices. Indian food has spices that are very interesting and very important to the culture. The British version started adding some kind of protein source. So chicken was the usual one. There are some versions that call for mutton, which I think I've tried once. Has never been my favorite. So, but it would certainly add a different flavor to this soup. But as you can tell, with all the vegetables and that they're all, always very healthy ingredients in this soup. Some strong flavors, but I think you'll like them when we put them all together. There's a vegetarian version that's very good as well. So I invite you to go take a look, Google that version, and just kind of test it out and try it out. Soup's probably my favorite thing to make. I tend to make up a lot of soups, and usually if it turns out good, I think, wow, that's great, I'll do it again. I do it again and it's a whole different flavor. I should write things down. That's the problem. But it's kind of like a science experiment for me. I always had to like a little bit of this, a little bit of that, and to see how it changes the flavor. So today you have a couple of different recipes. I encourage you to try both. If today's soup doesn't turn out exactly like that recipe says, well, it's okay. You might like it even better, okay? So don't be afraid to try something a little different and experiment, okay? Let's see, what else did we have? Since it talks about peppers, one of those versions I believe does not require the use of peppers, but we had so many of these jalapenos growing in our gardens this year, and those tend to be spicy. These probably are not because they've been picked for a few weeks, so they tend to lose a little bit of their heat. And I promise not to make it too hot, for sure. We're going to make some alterations in this recipe in that it calls for using fresh chicken thighs, which I didn't have that. We all tend to kind of rely on sometimes the old rotisserie chicken. You might have one of those around, and they're so versatile. So where I got it will remain nameless, but there's a lot of good rotisserie chickens out there. So I'll show you how you can use this. That way it makes this soup a little bit faster to prepare. I have to say, I think soup tastes better when you have a long time to cook it. But if you don't, then hopefully you'll still like how it tastes. So we'll get started. I am cooking, this recipe calls for red lentils, which I'm cooking a little ahead of time. Otherwise, they require quite a bit more cooking time than what we have allowed in class. I try to buy things in bulk because you usually get a better price. Not that you can't buy these in a package, but I did some research on lentils. I think there are at least 100 varieties, and some of the oldest food in the world are lentils. So they have a varied taste, a flavor, texture, and very healthy for you. So I try to use lentils as often as I can. Let's see, what other things are we working on today? We're going to use a little coconut milk, which is typically used for a lot of Indian food, and a lot of other varieties of food. We might try a little bit of tamarind concentrate. Is anybody familiar with that? We were just talking earlier about how some candy, some Mexican candy is made with this, so it's very distinctive flavor. It's not sweet, so I think I'll be interested to see if you can taste it in our recipe. Also, just to show, there are some other varieties of and options. I usually use fresh garlic. This one is a little chopped garlic already made, so you can use that. I prefer the fresh, but if you don't have it, you can use that as well. Stock, if you make your own stock, great. If you don't, in a pinch, this works. Chicken stock, I use a lot of vegetable stock as well. If you're making the vegetarian version, you definitely will use the vegetable stock. So let's grab our bowl of ingredients. The first thing we're going to do is toast some spices. So you might ask, well, why would you do that? The toasting brings out the flavor a lot more, and it'll be a great smell in your kitchen, so everybody will be very happy that you're doing that. Again, I like to buy the bigger packages of this because if I use a lot of it, it's a better value. So this recipe calls for some mustard seed, some coriander right here. Now these are of course already ground up, but we're going to put those and toast these with the other ingredients. Curry powder. So if you go to buy curry powder, there's a lot of different varieties, anywhere from mild to hot, green curry. I mean, just a lot of cultures use curry powder, and it's just such a great smell for sure. And of course it will turn everything kind of yellow, so which is a nice color for this soup. What else? I did get something too called gram masala, so it's a mixture of different spices. And probably in this time of COVID, we can't send it around and have you smell, but anyway, sorry about that. It's a great smell. And also turmeric. So we're all pretty familiar with that because it has a lot of health benefits to it. And again, it's a very bright yellow color, which will add to our soup as well. Okay. So you can use a spice grinder, you can use a food processor to grind those up, but I thought we were just going to go the old kind of old school route, and I'm going to smash it with what is supposed to be a bean smasher. Okay. Let's open this up here. Usually if I buy this large of a portion, you want to use it up within a year, because it doesn't have the best flavor after that. So, okay, so we're going to take about a teaspoon of the mustard seeds. I'll just dump those in. You can actually make real mustard, like the old hot dog mustard, out of these too. Some coriander. Let's see. A little help opening that up. So I'm just interested in hearing what are your favorite soups? What are the soups you normally make? Yeah.
Mulligatawny is probably my all-time favorite, actually.
Is it? Great.
Yeah.
Okay. Hey, well, I hope to do it justice, so that makes me a little nervous.
I've tried a few different recipes. I've
Yeah.
kind of found the one I like the most.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's definitely my favorite.
Yeah, great. Yeah, I think that is the secret. I mean, there's so many different recipes out there, and some are good, some are not. So just finding the one you really like
I
is the
actually
best.
lost the original recipe. It was in a cookbook
Uh-huh.
that I inadvertently threw out, and I had to scour the internet to find that book. So, because
Yeah.
the other recipes I tried just weren't the same.
Wow,
So
wow,
that's my
interesting.
surprise for the soup recipe.
Okay. Oh, good. Well, I might have to ask you after class what that is. Always happy to find a really great recipe. Hi.
I like African peanut soup.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Someone made it for me and it was so good that I tried to,
Yeah.
and I can't make the recipe, and I've tried other recipes. I have a hard time with it, but it's good.
Yeah,
It's just not as
but
good
it's
as
good.
this.
Yeah, yeah, sounds great. Oh, yeah, and that's a lot of things that we've had to eat in the past. There's just, sometimes it's where you're at, or the people you're with, or whatever that makes it memorable. So, and of course the lentils, I mean, they cook down pretty fast, but they take a lot of liquid. So while you're cooking them, you have to make sure they don't burn. So I'm gonna add a little bit more chicken stock, just because I rather use something with flavor instead of water. Well, then you've got a head start when you put it in the soup. Or again, vegetable broth.
You don't soak them before you just put them in there.
These you don't have to, no, because they're pretty fast cooking, and the recipe I know will call for adding them to the soup and cooking them in the soup, but that takes about an hour with everything else, so we're not having that time today. Okay, so we've got these two together. Now we're going to add the curry and the turmeric. All right. And one recipe will also say cardamom, cinnamon, all that. This is not the one we're doing today, however. So, okay. So I'm going to take about a teaspoon of the curry powder. Okay. Curry's one of those things, too, if you like it, that you want to have a little bit more in there. I'll put just a little bit of this. Like I say, the recipe didn't call for it, but I think it'd be a nice addition. Got a nice flavor. I'll just add about a half a teaspoon of that. Okay. And then a little turmeric. Okay, about a half a teaspoon of that. All righty. So I'm just gonna smash those down a little bit so when they cook together, it'll be a nice blend. All right. And the coriander is going to leave a few almost like shell-like particles there, but it's not going to hurt anything at all. It'll get blended with everything else. So we're just trying to kind of get them all mixed together. It smells great from where I'm at. And we're just going to kind of toast a little bit in a dry skillet before we add that to our other ingredients. Okay, here we go. All right, so you want to get your pan pretty hot before you put it in there. All right. The nice thing about soup too, if it does last more than a couple of days, it tastes better. It can freeze pretty well. I wouldn't put the coconut milk on the top if you are going to freeze it though, because it probably doesn't freeze as well as the other ingredients. Okay, so in the meantime, while we're waiting for that to get hot, we're gonna start chopping up some of our vegetables here. I've also cooked the rice ahead of time because that takes a little while, and that actually won't go into the soup. We're going to put it on top of the soup. So that's like a whole meal very easily in here. Wow. So we're going to use a couple of sweet potatoes. Hopefully everybody's a fan of those. You can put a regular potato in there too. It doesn't matter. I just happen to like the color and the flavor of these. So I'm just going to go ahead and chop those. I actually like to eat these raw. So I'm just going to kind of chunk them up in about the same size. And they'll cook pretty quickly. This one, here's the other one. She has a lot of great vitamins in a sweet potato. Growing up in the South, I always thought you had to have brown sugar and butter. That was the only thing you put on them. But they taste just fine on their own. All right. Okay, and we also have a couple of carrots. And I'm just going to leave the skin on there because I've washed them. That's where all the vitamins are too. And important to kind of cut everything about the same size so it will cook pretty evenly. We're going to kind of cook these a little bit ahead of time so they're not just raw in the soup. We've got a little bit of celery. Get some greenery here. Take this all out. We're going to need that to put our stuff back in. I love to chop things. That's very relaxing to me, so I could just chop all day long. End up with way more than what we need. Of course, you have to be careful, especially when you have sharp knives. When I first started doing catering, I was chopping a lot, and I always got a few too many jobs than what I could do comfortably. So I remember looking down one day, I was chopping really fast, looking down, and I thought, oh, what happened to that? So I had just chopped through my thumbnail, and then I thought, wow, I wonder what happened to the thumbnail. I was more worried about that than the injury I just given to myself. So it's priceless to have sharp knives, that's for sure. Okay, just going to do a little bit of onion here. So how many of you have a garden at home? Or do you go to farmer's market or anything? Okay, yeah, okay. Yeah, we're real lucky around here to have such a great local produce. Again, about the same size piece. And we're just going to dump it all together, cook all together. Okay. The lentils are just about ready to go in with the rest of the stuff. Okay, our pan's hot there. Let's see where we put our spices, right here. So I'm going to dump these in, and hopefully you'll be able to taste them or smell them. You'll be able to taste them later. Smell them in just a few minutes here. Okay, let's get this one going. All right. And so I'm going to saute a lot of our vegetables ahead of time. Normally I would use olive oil, but today I'm going to use a little butter because we want to add that flavor. And of course, butter burns pretty easily, so we're going to kind of keep the heat on low. So we'll just toss our butter in. Whoops, got one in there. Melt a little bit. Usually I'd be crying by now, but these are sweet onions, so get those. The cilantro, we're not going to cook with that. We're just going to use that for garnish. And if we cooked with it now, it wouldn't be very appealing, would it? Because it would get to be not a very appealing color. Take that off. See, I've cut one pepper here. Normally when you are cutting jalapenos, you want to wear gloves. But you see, these have been around a while, so I don't think they'll be as hot. And I'm going to take the seeds and the membrane out. That's what makes it hot for sure. So I know a lot of people aren't as crazy about peppers here as other places, but I like to have a little spice in there. So I'll cut those up into pretty small pieces. All right. And again, we do have fresh garlic, but today I think we're going to try this. ready to go there. Okay. Anybody smelling this yet? It's hard when you have your mask on. You can smell it. Good. Okay, I was hoping so. If you couldn't at this point smell it, then you know your spices are a little bit old, so you'll want to replace them. Okay. All right, so we're going to set those aside. Get this going here. I like this recipe too because it has a little bit of everything in there. We've got a little fruit with our vegetables, so that's going to add a little bit of sweetness. We're going to have a little bit of tartness. One of the recipes calls for lemon juice, quite a bit of it, as a matter of fact. So that's why it's so appealing, this soup, because you have a great variety of flavors. Since we are using the rotisserie chicken, I'm going to be careful not to add a lot of salt because these are pretty salty anyway. So I'm just going to chunk up some pieces here. My dogs, this is their favorite food, although I don't give them a whole lot of it, but they always know when I'm bringing a chicken home. They get very excited. And of course, with a whole chicken, you can, oops, I didn't know that burner was on. That was almost too much. I was going to say, you can get the thigh meat as well. So you get that dark meat, and that's what it's adding the flavor to this recipe. Well, those are very toasted now, aren't they? Almost glad we didn't go the next step and have burned spices. Let's see, we're just going to chunk this up a little bit. And this is already cooked. I definitely would not put it in, if it were raw, not put it on the same cutting board. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and dump this into our pan. Such a beautiful view up here, it's kind of hard not to be distracted. Just go look out the window. Oops. And of course you can cut as little or as much chicken as you want. The nice thing about this rotisserie chicken too, I always save the bones because then I just make chicken stock, and it makes great chicken stock. We're going to kind of coat this chicken in our spices and kind of cook them for a second. So that'll get the flavor in. Let's see. I'm going to put these peppers over here. So I'm just going to add a little bit more butter now to the pan with our spices. When you're so used to cooking on a gas stove, you forget about the electric stove. It stays hot for quite a while. And we're also going to add some tomatoes too to the cooked vegetables. There we go. So we're just going to kind of coat our chicken and let that sit for a few minutes while we're waiting for our vegetables to get done. Take a little bit of our garlic here. About a teaspoon of that. And then finally we'll add our spinach, one of the last things we add. And then I'll add this tamarind, just a touch, because I think it's such an interesting flavor. We'll do that at the very last. So typically, you want to have this simmer for about an hour. So it'll be a little bit less. So unless you want to pick out a cookbook and just look at it, take up some time here. There we go. Yeah, I'm going to go ahead and chop my apple too. We won't add that till the very last. And when you're cooking with an apple too, you want to use a variety that has pretty good flavor. I think this is called ambrosia, so it's kind of a sweet apple. I would never cook with like red delicious apples. Those are usually pretty tasteless. So Honeycrisp is good. Just a lot of good. What's the other one I tried the other day? Ginger Gold is excellent cooking apple. Since it is apple season, I do have an apple tree, but the deer like eating them so well that I don't think there are going to be any left. So I'm going to go ahead and just cut this whole apple here. The vegetarian version also had some garbanzo beans in it, so you can actually add quite a few different ingredients and still have a great soup. Add a little bit of pepper over here. These red lentils make great hummus too, by the way, if you've ever tried that. Just put them to the food processor and make a paste out of them, and yeah, really good flavor. Okay. Spoons for this. This is the tamarind here, which it looks a whole lot like molasses. But it's just a very distinctive flavor. It's almost kind of lemony. Yeah, so it'll be interesting to try some more recipes with that. When you get to the point too with the vegetables, when you feel like they're getting pretty close to being tender, then we're going to throw everything together and add a little bit of liquid. And what I'm cooking is not burning. I just think something got on the burner, so. Sometimes too, when I'm making soup, I make kind of a little bit of a roux to cover the vegetables, because when I add the liquid that way, it makes it a little bit thicker. So rather than just being a liquidy kind of soup. You can actually, when you've got all these ingredients put together, you can use an immersion blender and mix it all together. But I kind of like to have a little bit of some pieces in my soup, I guess. So when I make the roux, what I do is just kind of sprinkle a little bit of flour over my vegetables that I'm cooking, and then I add the stock. So I think it's about time to do that. So probably about a tablespoon. And you just want to brown that flour so you cook out all the flour taste. All right. So then I'm going to put our chicken stock in there. This one's already open. It's always good to have lots of chicken stock. I think I've gone through 6 boxes a week before. That's because I'm always adding it to stuff. Okay. So at this point too, I'm going to add back in some of the lentils. Not all of them. I like to save some to put in something else. So yeah, it's a beautiful color already. And I'm going to dump the chicken in there, although it's already cooked, but you've got all the seasoning in there. A little bit, and I'm going to still use this pan to cook the apples in, so we still get the rest of that flavor in the bottom. So has anybody done any traveling lately or anything? I know things are still not quite back to normal like they are. So where have you gone to?
Here. I've gone to hear from Minneapolis.
Oh,
Or
I'm
not
sorry.
Minneapolis, Milwaukee.
Oh, Milwaukee. You're here visiting from Milwaukee? Okay, excellent. My neighbors have their parents here from Milwaukee, so it's a good place to be from, isn't it? Yeah, great. All righty. Okay, got that butter melting. I'm going to put the apples in there. Of course, there's a lot more to Milwaukee than beer and cheese, right? That's everybody else thinks about that. Okay. So now we got it boiling a little bit. That's good. That's where we want it. Let's see, we're going to add the coconut milk at the last and the tomatoes. Of course, at this point, it's always good to have a taste because you kind of know what else you need to add. Oh. Well, good taste so far. And you'll get to find out in a few minutes. There. A little more pepper, a little more salt. See, if you want to add cinnamon or cardamom, any of those things, it's a great time to do that too. Just whatever your favorite is. All right, so now I'm going to pour the tomatoes in. Not the whole can. Oh, that's a lot of nice color too. Okay. There, it won't be long till we'll be ready to taste some of that. I always put the spinach in towards the end. I'm going to chop it up a little bit. Just because we have it, I'm going to put a little bit of that in there, see what happens. Okay. And in fact, I can't taste those jalapenos at all. That's kind of disappointing. I want it to be a little hotter. You just don't know. You're going to turn that down a little more, simmer. And if at this point, if you feel like it's just too thick, and you can always add a little bit more chicken stock again. And then we are going to add the coconut milk, so compensate for that. So at this point, if you did want it to be all blended and smooth, you would do it right now probably because things are soft and use the immersion blender. But I just love the way all the colors are standing out in that. So as I say, I just rather have it in chunks. That's my personal preference. Okay. I'm going to cut this lemon open just to put a little squeeze in at the last. I'm going to chop up a little cilantro. Is anyone here on a special like low salt diet or anything? Not that I promise I won't make it too salty, but it just needs a little touch more. Hi. Oh, thanks. You're welcome to join us. I did wash this ahead of time, so there you go. I love cilantro. It's one of my favorite things. A lot of people are kind of in the middle with cilantro, but either hate it or you love it. Oh, I happen to love it. Okay. Let's see. We're going to have another taste, and then I promise you your time is coming soon. Just don't want to make you eat anything that needs something more added. Now we're going to add a little bit of squeeze of lemon. Okay. Now we're going to slowly add a little bit of coconut milk here. Coconut milk is another one of my favorite things. Just make it a lot smoother flavor. So the rice I've made too ahead of time. I have seen recipes where they added the rice into the soup or just put a kind of a mound on top of the soup. So that's what we're going to try today. Just put a little extra on the top. All right. So who's ready to taste? Is anybody ready? Okay. Sounds good. Let me wash my hands up here and we'll put some in a bowl. It'll be very hot, but in like most things, there's a lot more flavor when something's a little bit cooler and not boiling hot. Okay. So if you make this at home, I would continue to cook it for another 20 minutes or so, but vegetables are pretty tender, so we're gonna go ahead and taste it. Well, hopefully you'll feel like it's your lucky day because there aren't as many of us here and you'll get a nice big portion. But if you don't like it, you'll think, oh, well, I wish there had been more people here. Okay, so I'm just going to set out some bowls and some spoons, and you're welcome to come up and help yourselves. And if you feel like it needs more salt and pepper, I will not feel bad.
From start to finish, how long did this take?
Gee, probably, say 40 minutes.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it takes me longer to remember what I have to do next, so that adds a little extra time.
That's good that it's realistic then.
Yes, that's true. There you go.
Yeah, I was hoping to be here sooner, but it seriously just smells so beautiful.
Hey, no worries. We're just glad you're here.
Yeah, thanks a lot.
Sure. Here we go. Thank you. You are welcome. So, see, when you're making it, please, yeah, make adjustments. If you want it hotter, add a little bit more chili to it, or spicier.
I'd say spicier.
Yeah, I think it does need spicier. I agree. Which is too bad because I hope those jalapenos will really add that flavor. Oh, but again, having been in the refrigerator for a couple of weeks, I guess that took care of that. But you could add even like red pepper in there too, if you didn't have fresh chilies. Yeah, I think in our last class we made salsa verde. One was a little too hot, and so everybody told me it was too spicy, so I better make this a little bit more mild.
Are there occasions where you ever keep the seeds of the jalapeno in a dish?
Yeah,
I know
I
they
would.
add a lot of spice, and I
They
never
do, yeah.
do based on practice, but
And that's how, yeah, I took them out at first because I thought, oh, if it's way too spicy, but yeah, next time I'll know. Yeah, the membrane and the seeds, that's what makes it spicy. So here's a little salt and pepper too. Okay. But anyway, that's how we make mulligatawny. And
it could be spicier, but that's
yeah, so it's just a fun soup to make it your own. So thanks for joining us today, and I hope you will make this soup at home.